Hi everyone, so welcome to another video about the Ableton hidden secrets. So in this particular one, I'm going to be focusing on one aspect that is quite overlooked in Ableton, and it's the fact that you can actually do parallel processing within one audio channel, and that to me is insanely powerful. I'm going to be showcasing some techniques that we can do to drum bass sounds or jungle bass sounds, and how by using parallel processing within adding different effects, etc., we can actually get sounds to sound larger than life and bigger than life. So anyway, so as you know, my name is Hector. I produce under the alias of Hektagon. For those of you that just start watching me, I've been an Ableton teacher for the last 14 years, and I've been an electronic music producer, mainly doing drum bass at the moment and jungle for the past 35 years, and I produce under the alias of Hektagon, as you know. So anyway, let's crack on with the video, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Right, as you can see here, I've got a project that has got a beat going, and I've got some examples of the kind of sound I'm talking about. So this is just one bass sound. I've got 3 examples of bass sounds, so I'm just going to click just the beat at the moment so you can hear it. Cool. So this is one bass sound I created, which has got a little bit of parallel processing. So this is one example. So as you can see, it's quite sort of abstract and quite thick sounding as well. Another one as well, again, made in operator, and you can hear the before and after when I take away the parallel processing. So let's have a listen to the sound with the parallel processing on. And then without it. So quite small, right? You can hear that doesn't have a lot of weight to it. Another example very quickly here as well. So this red one, also made in operator without parallel processing, sounds like this. And with parallel processing. Cool, so let's get started. So let me demonstrate how this works. So this is an interesting way that we can get sounds, especially bass sounds, especially if you're into drum bass or bass music. This is a really nice way to thicken out your bass sounds and give them a little bit of life and character, which I think is super important. So one thing I'm going to be starting with is I'm going to do like a very simple one note kind of bass with operator, right? So let's go over here, and I'm going to use the default settings here. Nothing fancy, it's just literally one carrier, and all I want to do is just have B modulating A, right? As you can see here from the algorithm, that's what it means. It's like A carries a signal, B modulates a signal. So it's the opposite of filtering. With FM, what we do is we add more energy to the sound. It's a bit like we add more character to the sound. So we start with a simple wave sine, right? The simple waveform that you've got in something like operator, and then by modulating that sound, we've got something more complex. So let's have a look at what that sounds like. Again, I'm just going to draw like a simple note. In fact, I'm just going to copy the clip here because I think that's already going to work literally. So I'm going to just like that. So it's just a single bass. If you haven't got headphones, you might be able to hear it, so just bear that in mind. Please wear headphones to hear the bass. So I'm going to solo it so we can hear it. It's quite really deep bass in there. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over to operator and let's give it some movement. One of the easiest ways that we can give movement, I'm going to go into coarse settings of 2. So if we set that to 2, it's going to give us a sound that sounds a little bit like a square wave. And here I'm going to click on the envelope. With the envelope, what we're going to do is we can reshape when the modulation takes place. So let's have a listen to that. And let's bring the level up. So we can do that, or we can also play around with the fine tuning. If we want to introduce some kind of beating, which I quite like, so I'm going to keep that in there. But the other really cool thing about operator, an insanely powerful thing about operator, is this. If I show you quickly here, you can see that on the envelope, you can actually loop the envelope. And I'm going to set that to loop to milliseconds. So what we can do is we can play around with these envelope settings here, and that's going to re-trigger the envelope movement. It's just going to be re-triggered at the decay stage. So let's have a listen. There you go, right? We can add a little bit more attack. And let's bring the level down a little bit. We can even play around with the milliseconds here to make it faster. Very similar to the pace I had before. And if we wanted to add movement to the kind of the timing of the sound, what we can also do is we can play with the pitch envelope, and we can go over here, and instead of modulating the pitch, as you can see on destination A, what we can also do is we can modulate in destination B. We can actually select the time value, and that's going to give us a little bit of movement in terms of like the speed of the wobble, kind of, so to speak, right? Right, so you see that's like slower the start and it gets faster. You can make it even faster by going down like this. But let's have a listen to it with the beat, because that's the best way I find to do this especially in drum and bass and kind of jungle. So let's turn the volume up. Yeah, that's what we got so far, right? So now with parallel processing, what we can do is we can enhance this sound, and there's a few devices that I'm going to do. The first thing I'm going to do for parallel processing is let's add a device. So let's add, for example, Corpus. So I'm going to use Corpus in order to add a little bit more character to the sound. So as you know, Corpus uses physical modeling, right? But one of the things that we're going to do here is we're going to group Corpus like this, and we're going to set Corpus to 100% wet, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to group it, so it becomes an audio effect rack, and within an audio effect rack we can have parallel processing. So if I click on this icon here on the chain list, you can see that now it's Corpus, but I can have another chain, and that's going to be my empty chains or my dry chain. In fact, I could rename it, I don't know, just to make it easier. Let's call it dry, and I don't know, let's turn it red. There you go, so I can see it, and then Corpus like that. So now what we can do is we can have a listen to the effect of Corpus over the dry signal, which is really cool because we can go really crazy with Corpus, and we can always dial it back down. So let's have a listen to the sound as it is. And the other thing that's very important is like Corpus can actually track the pitch. So if we want to do that, we can go over here. This is my channel 13. We can go over to MIDI from channel 13 operator, and let's track the frequency of the MIDI notes. And that basically means that Corpus will react to the different notes that we play, which is super important for this kind of bass sounds. Right, so that's the original sound. Let's solo Corpus for a second. That's the sound we get with this particular algorithm here. Let's play around with different ones. So this is the amount of harmonics generated. It basically adds more brightness. We can increase the brightness so we can hear more of the upper harmonics generated. Can you hear that? Pretty cool. And we can of course play around with the inharmonics, and this is basically what it looks like. Let me just quickly add the spectrum analyzer so we can see what we do into the sound. This is a very important thing to do whenever you do any kind of like sound design. So this is the energy that we add in, right? So this, there's a little bit of pitch bend actually. Let me kill the pitch bend because I think there was pitch bend originally in here. So that gets a little bit confusing. Let's just kill the pitch bend for now. So it's just gonna be, this is the harmonics generated, and this is basically the material. Basically means that it can be like more sort of brighter, like that, or deeper, right? So I want to just kind of keep the upper harmonics there. And with this in harmonics things, what we can do is we can take all these harmonics generated, push them farther up, which is kind of interesting. I quite like that energy there. Let's try adding a filter. But I don't like the sound there is a bit strange. What we can also do is we can play around. Let's take the filter for now. We can play around with the harmonics and actually put all the harmonics closer together. And the thing is, you just explore this. Just have a listen to it. It gets a little bit loud, so bear with us. Let's turn it down. This is the thing with, let's turn it off. There you go. Let's bring the decay all the way down so it doesn't resonate so much. There you go. So that's adding this kind of like weird harmonics there, right? Let's bring it together with the original. Let's play around with the material. There you go, look. We add in all that energy. We can play around with the harmonics. Let's bring it up a little bit. I quite like that actually. Let's play around with the width. So that adds this kind of like interesting kind of overtone, right? That was the original sound. And remember that we can blend it in, you know, we can add it. Really cool. It's sounding really, really fat. What else can we do? We can, of course, another corpus, right? Just by duplicating it. And this one here, we can maybe play with a different kind of material. Let's try the string. Oh, I quite like that. That's quite interesting kind of texture to it. Let's play with the harmonics. I quite like that. I like the kind of overtones that he's adding, right? You see what I mean? And we can add more effects. I mean, it's got a little bit of like a weird kind of a bleepy sound at the start, but I don't mind it. For now, I'm going to roll with that for a minute. And then what we can also do is we can play with other effects. Right, so let's minimize this. So other effects that can work quite nicely could be something like roar, if you wanted to add some crunch. And remember that we still got the original signal in there. So I'm gonna grab roar and I'm gonna make it 100% dry wet and literally add a little bit of extra kind of character, maybe a little bit of noise on the highs. Maybe a little bit more kind of like presence as well on the mid-range. Nice. And maybe add a little bit more oomph on the low end. It's maybe too extreme with that. Let's try a different mode, otherwise I might not add the low end boost I was going for. Let's try maybe adding a little bit of shards. I like the kind of clickiness he adds. Really cool. Remember that because we're doing parallel processing, we can potentially be like, okay, that's cool. But I want this to be maybe like just adding kind of high-end energy only, right? Because we got the other bass in there. And you might say to yourself, and I also want this to be kind of wide. And remember that this is just one layer that we've got. We can blend them in. So look, I'm going to add a chorus and just add it onto just before roar. So the chorus is just going to widen up the sound. Again, I'm going to set it dry wet 100%. Maybe speed up the rate. Be careful as well with mono compatibility. If you do a lot of width, I always suggest that. Oh, I really like that. So that's giving me a little bit of crunch. Let's bring it down. Yes, we like that. And we can even add noise, right? So this is another technique I like to do sometimes. This is just a combination, right? Like we might not like some of the texture added with Corpus. I do like it. It's okay. We can play around with also like that. If we don't like that sound, we can go higher. Maybe that's better actually. That's quite cool. And automatically you can hear it adds kind of like a spread effect, right? Obviously it's getting a bit loud, so if you get too loud, just select the first channel, hold shift, select them all, and then bring the volume down. There you go. And we can potentially add, as I said, a little bit of erosion if you wanted to add a little bit of like a top end sound to it. I like to use the white noise a lot, especially on kind of drum and bass. Gives it like a kind of like clarity. And remember that the original one was just operator, very simple, but it's the effects and the parallel processing that's fattening up the sound. Well, actually, we like it high. It really brings it, but I don't like it to be constant. It's a bit annoying, right? So one thing I do, and this is a little secret I'm sharing with you, is to use an envelope follower. Let's have a solo. Let's solo the noise. This is what he's adding. He's adding white noise, right? So it's opening up the stereo field a little bit with the noise, with erosion, which is really cool. But I don't like it to be so constant. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say, okay, so the envelope follower is basically listening to the signal. And we can say, okay, cool. So let's map that to the amount. So then the signal, the amount of erosion kind of reacts to the movement on the waveform. So it just sounds a little bit more balanced. It's not so constant. You see, kind of, otherwise it was more like a constant kind of noise. But this has got more nuance to it. There you go, right? We can do another thing which is really cool if you want it, because this is just adding noise, right? We could potentially just sort of shape it. And with an EQ we can say the envelope follower is only going to listen to the upper harmonics, not the super low end, right? So you can see the noise is now following the wobble, which is really cool. Let's have a listen again. And you see you can blend them, right? Really cool, right? So let's play it along with the beat. Hopefully it sounds good. And of course, because we are playing with the firm, it is worth exploring. I'm going to add sidechain, of course, so it sounds a little bit more natural. I've already got a sidechain that I created earlier. Let's have a listen. There you go. And here we can explore maybe like, I don't know, playing around with the amount of modulation. Remember, that was the sound without the parallel processing. And then this is with the parallel processing applied. And we can of course bring more of the dry, right? So remember, we still got the dry there. In fact, I like it to be a little bit more prominent. What else can we do? We can potentially play around with adding more harmonics, so we can explore things out. I don't know, let's see. There you go. I think Satul is best for this. We can even do the carrier if we wanted to add more harmonics into the carrier. Maybe just the one. No, I think it's better without it. And then sometimes what I tend to do is I play around with some kind of automation, right? So I might go over here and play around with like a little bit of pitch bend. And I mean, obviously this is like repetitive, but you can just maybe go like up. I'll play around with the coarse settings to give it some movement. So I can maybe go, I'm going to change this to maybe like quarter notes. And then you can just sort of play around with the coarse just to sort of maybe higher. For example, right? Etc. So I hope you guys enjoy this quick tutorial. I just wanted to just demonstrate some of the cases and areas, especially for bass sounds, because I think it's super important, and parallel processing can really change the way you do things in Ableton. And of course you can apply parallel processing to drums and everything else, right? So this is super cool. And of course I haven't even got started on the fact that we can potentially EQ each one of these chains if we want it. So maybe just the high end of the sound could have just the chorus if you want it. You know, we can add an EQ, etc. So it can be really creative. I mean, this is what I did here with the envelope follower, right? So thanks everyone for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Any questions, let us know. And yeah, I hope you guys get to practice a little bit of the parallel processing in Ableton, which I think is insanely powerful, especially for advanced sound design, for drum bass, for techno, you name it. If you want to fatten up the sounds, this is one of the ways to do it. There's obviously more ways to do it, and I will show you on the next video. Anyway guys, so remember to subscribe and like the video if you can, and leave us a comment. That would be amazing if you liked it. And yeah, on to the next one. Take it easy.